Hello, how are you doing? I'm speaking to you on, today's Tuesday, the 2nd of February. And it's a significant day in the church's year, but I wonder if you know what it is. It sometimes gets forgotten. It's not Christmas, we've had that already. It's not Easter, we've got that's a little way away yet. It's not Pancake Tuesday. It's a day, it's sometimes known as Candlemas. I wonder if you've heard of that. It's a funny name, isn't it? It sounds like it's something to do with lots of candles, and that's sort of how the nickname came about. It's not a proper name, really, it's just a nickname. It used to be that on this day, churches would be filled with lots of candles, so it got nicknamed as Candlemas. But what's it about? Well, it's based on a story from the Bible. It's a moment when Jesus, as a child, was taken to the temple, and there, his parents made a sacrifice and an offering, and they prayed, and there were two people there, two very old people, someone called Simeon, a man, and a lady called Anna, and they'd been waiting and waiting and waiting for God to keep his promise and send the person who was going to rescue his people. Do you know what it's like to wait and wait and wait and wait? I think we all know what that's like at the moment, don't we? Because we're all kind of waiting for lockdown and COVID and everything else to be done with so that we can see people again. And it feels like it's taking ages, doesn't it? It feels like this has been going on for, at least 10 years. Actually, it's more like 10 months. But it feels much longer, doesn't it? And we're waiting. Simeon and Anna were waiting for God to keep his promise. And today, we look back at that moment when Jesus was presented in the temple. And it reminds us, of three things, really. One is that just like Simeon and Anna were waiting for God to keep his promises, he did. It felt to them like they were waiting ages. They waited a long time. God's people had been waiting even longer. It was about 400 years since the last of the prophets, you remember those people who spoke for God, since the last of those had spoken. That's a long time to be waiting, isn't it? And yet even when it feels to us like we're waiting and waiting and waiting for God to keep his promises, he always does. And he always keeps his promise at exactly the right moment. So we can trust him while we wait. That's the first thing it reminds us of. The second thing it reminds us of is that Jesus came to the temple. And that Jesus was and is God's Son. He's God with us. And it shows us that God was keeping his promise to be with his people. So even when it feels like we're waiting and we're wondering, where's God in everything that's going on? He's right here with us. So we can trust him. And the third thing it reminds us of, when you read that Bible story, it's really clear that everything they did was fulfilling what God had told them. And it reminds us that everything that Jesus ever did was doing what God told him. I wonder, have you always done what you were told? Well, I don't know about you, I can guess, but I know I haven't always done what I was told. That I've often done things that I shouldn't have done, or not done things that I should have done. And that meant that, when we do that as children with our parents, we get into trouble. When we do that with teachers, we get into trouble. And when we do that with God, our relationship with God is broken. And Jesus came and he lived the perfect life we didn't. Everything he did was exactly right. And that was so that when we trust him, well, then we can have his goodness covering us over, so that we're friends with God and we don't need to worry. So those are 3 reasons why today's really important. It reminds us that Jesus did the things that we should do, but he did them for us. It reminds us that God really is with us. And it reminds us that we can trust God while we wait for him to keep his promises, because he always does. So maybe you'll remember that next year when it comes to the 2nd of February in Candlemas. Good to see you. God bless.